Hello, welcome to Chapter 2, ACCA P1, Governance, Risk and Ethics. This chapter is about corporate governance and responsibility. It's sort of the beginning of the whole process. Because corporate governance is a system by which a business is managed in the best interest of its stakeholders. Now, stakeholders you probably always thought of as being shareholders, but that's not now the case with P1. There's a lot more in terms of stakeholders, which more later, but let's just say for now that it's not just shareholders. Corporate governance is about the relationship between stakeholders and directors who have the executive power to control the business. Now, it's said sometimes this can be a constraining impact. Other people perceive this as being a positive thing. Some people, like probably directors, say it's a negative aspect. But basically, it's believed, and the Corporate Governance Code in the UK, its very new name, been updated in 2010 as a result of the banking crisis. But fundamentally, good corporate governance should contribute to better company performance by helping a board of discharge its duties in the best interest of shareholders. So it is looking there at the shareholders, but stakeholders too, other stakeholders will benefit. If you ignore good corporate governance, then the consequences may well be vulnerability or poor performance of that organisation. And we've seen a lot of that with the recent financial crisis, how vulnerable a lot of companies, businesses were to the economic downturn. They had just spent too much time building up debt, relying on systems to tell them what was going on, which were inadequate. And a lot of companies faced a lot of problems. Good governance should facilitate efficient, effective and entrepreneurial management that can deliver shareholder value over the longer term. Now, longer term clearly is something that's been very topical and talked about with the recent banking crisis and economic situation. A lot of people perceive shareholders not getting good value over the longer term because directors have looked at the short term from their point of view with bonuses and rewards, etc. So we'll come to it, but 2010 the corporate governance report was updated, felt to be pretty good in all areas. However, perhaps in the area of shareholders and their powers, perhaps a little bit more strengthening was required. But again, we'll come back to that. Now, good corporate governance is underpinned by 9 core concepts. So this is one of your first sort of lists that you've got to have to learn. You're going to have to learn them and define them and apply them. This is a P1 level paper, so you have to think about applying your knowledge. It's not just a case of learning your knowledge. Okay, so what are the 9 core concepts? Here are your 9. Okay, so there's your 9 concepts with a little definition behind each one. Okay, so neutral between all shareholders, so you don't treat any in favour of another. Integrity, straightforward, honest, fair dealing with everybody. Judgment, decisions you take are based on quality evidence and rational criteria. Your independence and objectivity, it basically means you're free from bias, disregarding matters that are irrelevant, so only taking an objective view on a subject. You act at all times with honesty and probity, therefore you're truthful, not misleading. You're free from spin. Openness and transparency. there is a presumption of full and frank disclosure when you're making your announcements, the way you act towards other people, other stakeholders, etc. It's open and transparent. Act responsible, so therefore in a timely fashion to correct weaknesses. You don't just find something and then leave it alone and wait for someone else to sort it out. You take responsibility to sort it there and then, quickly, if it's weak. If it's strength, then clearly you build on those strengths and take responsibility to as a company director to do that. And finally, accountability. You're answerable to your stakeholders for your actions, decisions as a director. So you've got to take that into account. So they're your 9 fundamental points about corporate governance. On the next few pages, so on the next page, we have a little bit more than what's in the box above, but fundamentally this is no different to what I've just talked about. How you go about learning this is up to you. It might be worth rewriting some of these. Certainly the list of the 9. Maybe a good way of trying to learn these sort of things is to think about your organisation. How do these 9 fundamentals fit into your organisation? Do you think they apply? Do you think that there's an element of weakness in your organisation? Trying to think of P1 in terms of real life scenarios does help to bring the paper home to you about how it works and what it's like. Okay, right, I'm going to end the recording there, and then we'll pick up in the next chapter with agency theory and costs.